You're listening to theoutdoorstation.co.uk.
First of all,
minimum wage.
Maximum fun.
Backpackinglight.co.uk.
The UK's first outdoor podcasting show.
Hello and welcome back to another podcast sponsored by backpackinglight.co.uk. Now, faithful listeners to my podcasts and readers of the TGO magazine will know that not so long ago I interviewed a very interesting lady, Judy Armstrong, who is attempting the first long-distance Alpine challenge, and that is to hike right around the European Alps from Monaco to Vienna and back again. Now, that's some 3,300 miles and 320 miles of ascent and descent, and it's all in aid of cancer research. If you've heard the previous podcast, you'll know that she has completely sold up her life in the UK to do this. And, as well as being a hiking first in Europe, she's also taken the lightweight approach completely to heart. Andy Howell and I managed to catch up with this trailblazing lady a few days ago, just before her trip starts in April, to see how her last-minute preparations were faring.
Well, I've had a slightly rocky introduction to walking here. I came out here and thought that I was in terrific shape, having walked every day, well, most days in and out of work. But of course, walking flat roads and things to London, even if you've got a big backpack, it's nothing like the same as going up and down hills. So I got tendinitis in the first 5 days, which was really stupid of me. That set me back a bit. And in a way, I'm almost a victim of my own success. The strength training I've done has gone really, really well, and I'm in fantastic sort of shape in terms of how strong I am. But cardiovascularly, I'm really quite weak, and so every time I go out and do a hard walk, I'm absolutely shattered the next day. So I've done about, my altimeter, I think, says about 45 kilometers vertical so far since I've come out here, and I've done about 550 miles, I think, give or take. So, yeah, I mean, I've got some useful training done, and it's coming together slowly.
And how's the weather with you at the moment? What does it look like as you're about to start off?
It's just staggering down here. It's so beautiful, Bob. I mean, it's sunny almost all the time. It's extraordinary. When you wake up and you think, God, it's sunny again. I think we've had rain 4-5 days max since I've come down here in late January.
Right. Okay, so and the long-term weather forecast, is that looking very promising?
Yeah, it's not bad. There's a risk of a few showers and things coming through, but you're always going to get those in the mountains occasionally. I went down to Monaco a few weeks ago to check out the conditions and the snow conditions, and more importantly, to see where I could buy food on the way. And even 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was definitely early spring. So I'm expecting that it'll be relatively easy going, certainly for the first 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, I know Andy wants to talk to you about your gear selection. I gather you've been agonising over the shelter, which is very interesting to all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's always fascinating looking at people's gear choices. You've been doing some fascinating testing with tents, including building your own, haven't you?
Yes, I've got this weird thing. It's fairly funky, actually. If you know what an Acto looks like, it's sort of fairly sober and green and black and stuff. This thing is a sort of translucent pale grey with purple end pieces. So it's something you wouldn't miss on a campsite. But it seems to work. It's fine. It's significantly lighter than an ordinary Acto. The only downside, really, is I haven't been able to test it in heavy weather.
Yeah, and you really do need to do that when you're up in the mountains, don't you? Give you that security. So
exactly.
Yeah. So will you take this in the end, or?
I think I'm probably going to take my Acto. I'm only going to take the outer in any case, whichever tent I take. Both the Acto and the tent that I've built are the same shape and the same size. The difference is simply in the materials that I've used. And a few minor differences to do with ventilation. The tent that I've built has a bit more ventilation. But the Acto outer that I am probably going to use, I've lightened significantly in any case. I've ripped out the corner posts and replaced them with carbon tube, and all the cords and things underneath have been replaced with lighter weight spectra, and lots of bits and pieces and carbon fibre poles and things. So it's pretty light in any case. It's about 800 grams, I think.
What about the Gossamer gear equipment that you've taken?
I'm taking the Gossamer Gear night lights, the Gossamer Gear sleeping pads, which are tremendous. The problem with those is they're just big. You wander around and have this enormous thing on my back. It looks quite impressive. People look at it and you can see them thinking, God, she's carrying so much. And I'm thinking smugly, it may look big, but it's not heavy.
No, I was meaning the shelter. I thought there was a Gossamer Gear shelter you were also testing.
Yes, I've got that. That's the Gossamer Gear spin shelter. That's made entirely from spinnaker. I think that's the fabric, isn't it? Mm. It's good, and it's extremely light. I think it's about 350 grams, because you pitch it using upside-down walking poles. The problem I have, and I'm probably just not very good at this, is that it needs tremendous tension along the ridge to stop it from moving at all. And as soon as there's any sort of wind, again, it's probably just that I'm not very good at it, I find the side panels tend to rustle. And it's all very well having a tent that stays up in the wind, but if it rustles all night long, you're not going to get much sleep. I'm sure there's someone cleverer than me who can make it work better.
And what about the rest of the gear, Judy? What's working and what isn't?
Almost everything's working. I'm very pleased in particular with the alcohol stove I have from Trail Designs. It's called a Caldera Cone. It's extraordinary. You can heat quite a bit of water with next to no alcohol at all. Only 15 to 20 mils of alcohol is sufficient to heat enough water that I need, say, to do my cooking, to boiling point. It's a terrific little stove and it weighs almost nothing. So that's a big success.
And your sleep system, have you actually tried everything out in anger and spent a few nights out on the hills when it's, the weather forecast is cold?
Yes, I have. Yep, works well. You do end up feeling a bit like a chrysalis at the end of it by the time you've got your way inside it. And you've got to be pretty sure that by the time you got in there, that you do not want to get out for a call of nature in the middle of the night, because it takes forever. By the time you've worked your way out of a vapor barrier liner and a quilt and a bivy bag and a tent and things, you're well and truly awake after that. But it does work. It does keep me dry and warm, and perhaps just as importantly, it keeps the sleeping quilt warm as well, dry. There's no condensation that gets into that.
I'm curious on the quilt. Is this something that you'd made yourself, or is this another American product?
It's an American idea. There's nothing particularly original about what I'm doing. I've just nabbed lots of ideas from wherever I can find them. And this is simply creditbackpackinglight.com in the States, where they use quilts. It's quite a simple idea. Down really only works by having air spaces between you and the outside. And of course, if you lie down on the quilt, on the down, it's not going to give you any insulation that's worth having. So why bother having down underneath you? It's much more useful having something else underneath you, such as the Gossamer Gear night lights, which are closed-cell foam pads, so they don't absorb moisture, and then using the down above you to keep you warm above. I find it works very well.
Oh,
but
okay.
I forget who it was. Was it Paddy Dillon or something was saying on the forums that the problem with quilts is that the drafts get in around the edges, and I suspect that's the case. But if you put the whole thing inside a bivy bag, then of course you don't get the drafts.
And what about your pack, Judy? What pack are you carrying, and how much weight approximately are you going to be lugging across those mountains?
I've got a Gossamer Gear Mariposa, which is a nice lightweight sil nylon pack. It weighs, I think as it came to me, it weighed about 480 grams, just over a pound. As to its capacity, I'm not quite sure what it is. I think it must be about 40 litres or so, 45 litres. So obviously it's not quite big enough unless you extend the collar and put lots and lots of food in the top. But I have had a few problems trying to get everything to fit, and I do look a bit like a peddler at the end of the day. I've got my sleeping pad goes across the top of the pack, and on one side, it's a bit of a silly thing, on one side I have a solar panel, on the other side I have a GPS receiver, which sits there gathering signals. On the back I have snowshoes, and I have loads and loads of bits and pieces strung on the side. It looks a real mess, but it works very well actually. As to the weight, I haven't actually got a set of scales here, but I think without water, without food, I'm not going to take an ice axe. I don't think it's necessary. And I'm taking cut-down crampons, which are lighter than I'd previously planned. I think we're looking at about 6 kilos, maybe 6 in a bit.
And you've got to supplement that with food. I mean,
Exactly.
how many days are you going to be out with them before you can resupply?
That depends. There'll be some cases where I'll need to walk for, I think, a max of 4 days. There's one stretch which is 55 miles without resupply, which I've spotted. So I can try and work my way through there with 3 days of supplies.
And are you preparing food in advance, or are you basically carrying stuff that you bought at resupply points along the way?
Well, I basically behave like a locust whenever I get near inhabitation. If there's anything I can eat, I will. Quite simple, really. It's, I think, impractical to, I mean, much as I'd like to use some of these food dehydrators that look terrific for relatively short trips, I can't figure out how to resupply myself reliably in a foreign country. So I'm just going to eat whatever I can. Bread, pâté, cheese, milk, cereal, biscuits, eggs, you name it.
Lots of that mountain sausage as well.
Exactly,
Always
yeah,
works
and
well,
cheese
doesn't it?
too.
The first few days then, as you set out, which is obviously almost upon you now, have you given yourself just a little bit of a window for the final check of equipment, so that the first few days, if something doesn't quite work as expected on the trail, you can change it for something else?
Not really, Bob. I think I've done enough testing of my equipment now that I know what I want to take, and I trust it. I've had it for long enough and done enough miles that I think it'll work. And if it breaks, I'm just going to fix it on the trail. The best way, I think.
So give us an idea then of the first few days, as so we can visualise it and listeners can understand what you're going to be facing the moment you set off.
Well, I start off in Monaco, which is, you've probably seen it if you watch Formula One racing, that place with the huge mega yachts and things, with the Alps immediately behind, and lots of rich, wealthy people. And I go from there, looking, as always, like a scruff, up into the hills behind. I work my way through the villages to the little Italianate town of Sospel, which is lovely, actually. It's beautiful there. And with any luck, there might actually be a campsite open by the time I get there. And from there, it gets progressively wilder and rougher as you work your way into the Macron-Tour. Lots of steep hills with Mediterranean scrub, olives, figs, cicadas, and things like that are just coming in now. So I work my way into the Ligurian Alps, which are in fact northeast of Monaco, and then swing west and work my way right around the chain of the Alps. By about the end of the first week, I'm getting into some fairly heavy territory. There's the north end of the Macron-Tour. There are some passes at 2,700 meters, which are 9,000 feet. And on the north side of that, I've already had to check, and there will still definitely be snow when I'm there. Later on, I'm going to pass by something called the Cime d'Argentera, which is the largest of the mountains there. That's 3,250 meters, I think. And it goes on from there.
How are you getting on with the snowshoes? Because the snowshoes are quite popular in France, aren't they? But they're still relatively new here.
Yeah. The ones I have are absolutely fantastic. They're Northern Lights, and I spoke to Ross, I think it was, at Northern Lights, who talked me out of getting the racing ones, which are the really light ones, and I've got instead something called backcountries. It's astonishing how you can walk through fresh powder, relatively thick powder, and you just don't really sink in at all. I've been up to 2,850 meters in them a couple of weeks ago, and there was still fresh powder that wasn't at all crusted, and I sank in slightly further than my ankles. They make traversing over deep snow possible.
And how long will you be carrying the snowshoes?
I'm certainly going to be carrying the snowshoes for about 4 weeks, simply because my plan is to get to the east of Briançon and then to hop over the hill and catch the train back and leave my snowshoes at my place in France and then come back and rejoin the track. So that's probably the point where I'll ditch some of my winter equipment. And it just depends how spring is advancing. I should probably keep my crampons just as a safety measure and leave my snowshoes behind then.
You said you're not taking an ice axe.
No.
You're comfortable with just the crampons?
Yep. Don't see an ice axe as necessary. partly because of the snow conditions, and partly, in fact, because of the way the Via Alpina is constructed. I've done some of the high passes now, and some of them are quite steep, but none of them are really perilous. And I just don't feel that I'm going to need to have an ice axe to do the classic sort of Cairngorm, well, not Cairngorm, but Glencoe type of stuff where you're hanging onto the edge of something and not wanting to fall off it. The slopes are quite manageable, and I've got a good set of front crampons which I'm going to use.
You've certainly caught the attention and caught the imagination of many of the bloggers in the UK community, and obviously you've had some exposure in TGO magazine as well. The last time I spoke to you, you were saying you were being interviewed by some of the European TV channels?
Yes, I went down through Monaco and was interviewed by Riviera Radio, which is an English-speaking radio station based in Monaco, which serves Nice, Monaco, and Cannes and thereabouts. And it has about 150,000 listeners. And they interviewed me and ran news pieces for several days. And hopefully that spread the word about the Via Alpina a bit. And
so have you reached local celebrity status?
I wish. I don't think so. I've joined the French Alpine Club, and I turn up at the weekly meetings, and they sort of nod to me and then go chattering away to themselves, which I guess is kind of fair enough, isn't it? When you get a stranger, you tend inevitably to talk to people who you see week after week. But I'm certainly not the sort of person that people bounce straight to here. I think I have to get all the way around and sort of send them postcards regularly saying, "Remember me? I'm in Turin. Remember me? I'm in Vienna. Remember me? I'm going to be back in 2 months."
I was just wondering whether they were going to throw their doors open to you in the evenings and offer you copious amounts of olives and wine, you see. I
don't know, something like that. I'm actually finding it quite hard getting sort of known and recognised out here, but I don't mind. It's all right.
I'm sure your fame is going to spread. It'll take off and it'll accelerate away.
Well, it's not me. I mean, I don't really want to get known. I'm really just interested in trying to popularise the Via Alpina, because I think it's something that we should all be looking at a bit more.
Well, I think you started well. I mean, I think the website is fascinating. I mean, it's very, very informative, and it's a very good read, and the progress reports are good. Are you going to be able to update those a little as you move around, or are we going to have to sit and wait till the end of the whole trip?
I'm pleased you enjoy the website. There's a lot of work gone into that, not just from me, but also Brian and Tracy, who, between them, have designed and hosted the site. So that gives me a lot of pleasure to know that. As regards keeping it up to date, yes, I will be able to. One of the bits of kit that I've borrowed from America is something called a pocket mail. It's rather like those big old Nokia clamshell mobile phones that you sometimes see people using. It's got a wide screen, about 4 or 5 lines high, and a proper keyboard. And if you read some of my progress reports, I have actually been using that already. The way it works is you simply type things in and you can see what you've written, and then you hold the back of it against an ordinary landline phone and press buttons and things, and it sends the stuff through rather like a little fax to eventually get through onto an email system. And so with that, I can put together notes about what's been going on and who I've met and which particular problem I've had today and things, and send those through by email while I'm actually out on the road.
Oh, great. Well, that'll make a big difference when we're watching it. I was also struck by, I mean, one of the things that comes over very strongly in the website is how you're trying to develop this trail. I mean, the foreign language sections are interesting as well. I mean, it looks like a very serious endeavour. And are you getting much feedback from the French and is it Italian that's on the site?
Yes, I've had initial conversations with people both in Italy and in Austria, and there's someone in Germany who wants to interview me as well. France, not yet. I tried to contact the local newspaper, the Dauphiné Libéré, and they just sort of said, "Who? What? Really? How interesting. Thank you. Call us later." So I didn't get very far with that. So my plan really is to wait, I think, until I get to Chamonix. Then I'm going to shout at everyone and say, "I am walking from Chamonix to Monaco. I have been quite some way. Would you like to talk to me?" And hopefully they will then. But yes, I also have the support of the Via Alpina organization, and they're putting me in touch with their media contacts as well.
Talking of media, when we last spoke, you were saying that you were going to be recording an audio diary and shipping some files to me to compile for you. Is that still on the cards? Is all the equipment working okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, Bob. I have a little dictaphone which works nicely, and Bob has kindly constructed a wind hood that goes over it to stop all the funny noises you get. So I should be able to send that from time to time. All I need really is to find a computer to plug it into. And then, as I understand, it will find its way through to you. So you will be subjected to my inane remarks as I walk around the place. And hopefully something a bit more interesting occasionally.
That isn't the word I'd use for it at all, Judy. I'm passionately looking forward to the sounds you capture and the atmosphere. I think it's going to be an absolutely fascinating listen.
Oh, good. I'm pleased.
I'm certainly very envious. You know, just looking at the blog, looking at the progress reports, you think, yeah, there's a brave woman. That's some undertaking. And I don't know, you've certainly got me thinking about it. Perhaps one day.
Well, I think other people should. The Via Alpina is, I think, just as accessible as something like the GR10 in the Pyrenees. It's still in its infancy in the sense that some of the signposting isn't there. And this is part of the reason that I want to go out there, so that I can report back and tell people, this is what you'll find, this is how long it actually takes, these are how long the legs actually are, so that you can actually plan with something really concrete. Because at the moment the information's a little sketchy in a few places, but I think in principle we have the makings of the most fantastic mountain walk here.
And, well, I mean, you really did want to set up a kind of European equivalent of something like the Continental Divide Walk or the Pacific Crest Route, didn't you? And
yeah.
it has that kind of epic proportion to it.
Yes, it does. And, I mean, just like things like the Continental Divide and the PCT and the AT, the three very long walks that you have in America that are 2,000 or 3,000 miles long, perhaps the ones that get the most attention are the through hikers, the ones who start at one end and get to the other. But there are also an awful lot of what the Americans call section hikers. These are folk who spend perhaps 2 weeks on the trail, and they walk a bit, and then they come back the next year, and then they walk another couple of weeks or something. And it's entirely possible to enjoy the trail that way as well.
Well, I know a lot of people walk the GR10 and the HRP and the Pyrenees, you know, maybe 2 weeks every summer and take a few years to complete it. So another challenge for us. Great.
I hope so, yes.
Well, Judy, now let's just get the actual launch time and date right, because what I'd like to do is all the listeners who are supporting you, and I'm sure they all are, and all the bloggers as well, it would be nice if we could collectively raise our glass to you at whatever time that you actually leave. So can you actually give us the time and the date, and then obviously the UK time? I think are we an hour behind you or 2 hours?
You're 1 hour behind me. So, yes, I'm 1 hour ahead of you.
So what's the actual time and the date you're leaving then?
Well, I did think of going on the 1st of April, but then, of course, everybody... I thought this might not be such a good idea.
Tempting fate.
So it's probably better to call it the 2nd of April, I think, which is the Monday. And
what time? Do you know what time? Are you setting off at a particular time?
Yes, I'm going to be staying in the youth hostel in Nice, because Monaco is frantically expensive. So realistically, I'm probably going to set off about 8:30 in the morning. 8:30 in the morning will be 7:30 in the UK. Do you really want to raise a glass to me then?
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
We'll certainly be thinking of you.
I think thinking of you over a cup of tea and a biscuit.
Think of me over a cup of coffee.
Very English. No, we'll be drinking our tea.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think we should all collectively think of you over a cup of tea on April the 2nd. It sounds great.
A cup of cha.
Yeah, absolutely. And when then we'll be thinking, when's your next cup of tea? I suppose.
Yes. Well, fortunately, tea bags are relatively light things to take with me. But I think I'm just going to give up on tea. It's too complicated. I've just decided really just to drink hot water. I think it's much easier.
Wow, brilliant. Judy, well, I think, collectively, as I say, everybody this side of the water is all supportive, all behind you. We'll be looking at your blog with great interest and wishing you every success in doing this, and be extremely interested in all the feedback that you're going to provide. Yeah, there's a lot of us rooting for you. Good luck, Judy. Thank you so much, everybody, for all your support and interest. It does make a huge difference to me, especially when I'm sweating and swearing my way up these long hills, to know that there are people who are taking interest and are watching what I'm doing. Thank you, everyone. I don't think Judy is actually aware just how many people are already closely watching her blog at alpinechallenge.info, which, as Andy states, is eloquently written and highly informative. I hope to be getting and compiling an audio diary from her, as you heard, as circumstances allow, which I think will make for some great escapism for the rest of us stuck in traffic jams, etc. here in the UK. So don't forget to visit her site and lend support to cancer research if you can. And until we hear from Judy again, au revoir.
Oh, that was good.
Backpackinglight.co.uk.
Go lighter, go faster, go further.
This sponsored programme is produced and hosted by theoutdoorstation.co.uk.